And welcome everybody to another episode of Glove Up or Shut Up right here on AngryMarks.com. My name is Peter H. and I'm joined once again by my co-host, a man who never flies United, well not anymore, Stevie J from Omaha, Nebraska.
Usually I don't fly Delta, but now I've got two airlines that are on my shit list.
Jeez, that's a scary thing, that's for sure.
You know, I really don't like the smear campaign that they're going with the doctor now saying that, oh, he traded pills for sex, he did this, he did that. Well, you know what? All that stuff happened over a decade ago. He lost his medical license, he was suspended, he worked his way back up to having a practice again. He gets 1 day a week that he can actually practice because of the restrictions on his license. So don't you think that guy would have a little more investment in not getting off his flight if he can only practice 1 day a week? Doesn't that actually make his case instead of smearing him like they're trying to do? Because if I could only practice medicine 1 day a week, I wouldn't want to get off that fucking flight.
Well, speaking of doctors and commissions, let's transition to UFC this past week from New York.
You're going to take issue with the whole Chris Weidman thing, aren't you?
No, I'm going to start a little bit earlier with one of the fights was originally scratched at the last minute because one of the fighters has
breast implants. You're talking about Pearl Gonzalez.
Yes, Pearl Gonzalez.
Well, the rule was originally intended to apply only to boxers in the state of New York. So now that they sanctioned MMA, they weren't quite sure what to do about it. So the fight was off, and then it was on, and then nobody knew for sure. But on the day of the pay-per-view, it was all good to go.
And that wasn't the only thing fishy at the weigh-ins, because if you missed it, and I don't know how you missed it if you listen to this podcast, Daniel Cormier missed weight and then weighed in with seconds to spare between the 2-hour window he had. And
No, he could have taken 2 whole hours after his initial weigh-in. You're mistaken there.
Okay, but basically, it was Rumble that had the seconds because he had to wait for Cormier to step on the scale. That's what it was. Anyways, Cormier missed weight on the first attempt, and the second attempt, it looked like he was holding the towel as he was being officially weighed in, and I don't know the logic behind, or the science behind it, Stevie. You might have to fill me in here, but was he cheating the system here, or was this an innocent, people are making a big deal out of nothing here?
Okay, well, the whole reason that people think it's suspicious is because he lost 1.2 pounds in the matter of about a minute and a half, which isn't medically possible for a human being to do. So, the idea here is that while people were holding the towel for him, they might have been fudging the numbers a little bit. Somebody might have been standing on their tiptoes, or maybe they were just nudging it a little one way or nudging it a little the other way, you know. It's kind of like a sleight of hand magic trick. Once the towel is there, you can't see what's going on behind the towel. Now, that doesn't mean that Cormier was necessarily cheating the system, but it doesn't mean that he wasn't either.
So and the thing is, Johnson, the same number. That part got me. I was like, wait a minute. So he lost weight and Johnson found the weight within seconds? Something's not right here.
I think you can draw any number of conclusions you want to draw. The only thing that actually matters is that according to the New York State Athletic Commission, both men made weight for the fight and the fight was on. So, all other things aside, that's all we really need to know.
So basically, when it comes to the main event, it was on, and it was a title fight, and it was for the championship, Cormier Johnson, and let's just say this one did not go to the judges.
You know, when I did the Sherdog Radio Roundtable, and shouts out to Jordan Breen and Connery Bush, because we were a great panel for this one, the one word that kept coming up over and over again, or one phrase, I should say, was glass cannon. And that just simply means that every time Rumble Johnson is in a big fight, he has one weakness, and that's submitting to a rear naked choke. And everybody knows it, which means he's incredibly powerful, but he's also incredibly fragile. he's a glass cannon. And since Cormier had exploited that one weakness before, was it any wonder that he found it again?
I didn't think it would happen this fast.
Well, I think the reason it came even faster than it did in the last fight was because, dare I say it, mentally, Rumble Johnson had already quit before this fight, and he admitted it in his post-fight interview when he said, I made a decision that I was retiring, and I've got a new job, and I'm going to do something else with the rest of my life, because rolling around on the mat with a guy in a fight sucks.
Well, for those who missed it, Daniel Cormier beat Rumble Johnson with the rear naked choke in the second round at 3:37 was the official time.
That's it. And Cormier, whether you love him or you hate him, he's the best thing going at light heavyweight today. Woo!
And Stevie, there was some breaking news right after this fight.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you take the ball and run with that.
Right after the fight, Rumble basically retired from the sport.
Oh, I thought you were talking about something else because I already said that Rumble retired. So either you weren't listening to me or I was expecting something different.
No. Rumble retiring was the big deal. It was just the unexpectedness of it. It came literally out of nowhere.
Right, but that's why I say it was like he mentally quit before the fight, because he had already quit. He was moving on to what I'm told is a job in the NFL.
Do we know if it's a front office gig? Is it a coach? Is it a player? I'm confused.
My belief is, and I have nothing to base this on other than what's whistling in the wind, is that it's going to be like an athletic trainer / team, strength and conditioning type of job.
Well, it's not a bad gig to have. I mean, I'm sure a bunch of teams will line up for his services.
Right. I mean, look at the guy, look at his physique, look at the success he's had over the years. He's got a lot he could teach to a lot of people.
Absolutely. Let's briefly move on to the co-main event. Gegard Mousasi against Chris Weidman, and this one...
Yeah, this is where I thought you were going to talk about controversy and commissions, because Dan Miragliotta, you got some splaining to do.
We've talked about this rule before in the past multiple times, and we talked about when it was changed.
Yes, the official change, which has not been adopted by all commissions, and we should make that clear, this is no longer the unified rules of mixed martial arts, but the new suggested rules for commissions to adopt is that the palms of the hands must be down. Not fingertips, but actual palms on the canvas to be considered a grounded opponent. And there's none of this reach down and touch it and then pull your hand back up bullshit. That's, under the new rules, that no longer flies.
But, there's so many ways I could go with this, but I think it, as you said, it's not the unified rules. Certain states have it, certain states don't. It's just he had his fingers on the mat, he was hunched over, and he was getting kneed. One knee was perfectly legal. The second one, that's where the problem was, and that was the knee that really basically destroyed him.
Well, okay, so whether the knee was legal or not is open to interpretation. But what's not, in my opinion, open to interpretation is the fact that Chris Weidman was just basically getting owned here.
Oh, yes.
So even if he had been able to continue, which they decided ultimately that he wasn't, this wasn't really going to change anything. He was still going to get destroyed. I'm not upset with the fact that Gegard Mousasi won. I'm just upset with Dan Miragliotta being completely wishy-washy.
What I find funny is, well, not funny, that's the wrong term to use, but basically they stopped the fight, and you could hear the audio from the cage. And I think it was a referee talking to the judges or one of the commission people. Was that knee legal? I'm like, wait, you're asking him?
Yeah.
Are you fucking serious right now? Pardon my French, but are you fucking serious? It's a co-main event of a UFC pay-per-view. Are you fucking serious?
It's the confusion about the rules and which states have which rules and which ones don't. That's the reason nobody really knew.
So...
And here's another thing, to your point. there's not supposed to be instant replay in the state of New York, but apparently they looked at the replay to determine whether it was a foul or not.
Well, they stopped the fight. They determined that, he couldn't continue. The fight was stopped. TKO victory for Mousasi.
And that's the only thing I'm going to go with at the end of the day is I don't care what rule set you're using. I don't care what rule was applied. All I care about is the fact that Gegard Mousasi was winning this fight, controversy or no controversy. I think the outcome would have been exactly the same.
So, to the surprise of absolutely no one, Weidman has already filed an official appeal.
Well, not just him, but Sarah and Longo and everybody on that team has basically filed a complaint because you can hear them all vocally protesting.
So, here's the question. Now, I know where I'm standing on this. I know where Mousasi and Weidman stand on this. But, Stevie, if you had the choice, would you rematch this, or would you reward Mousasi with the title shot here?
That's going to be pretty hard to make a call on at this exact time because that was the last fight on Mousasi's contract. So
that's the other element, yeah.
You can't start talking about a rematch because at this point he's going to play the field and take whatever offers he can get, and UFC is probably going to have to pony up some pretty good money because Bellator MMA is coming calling, and he already has a relationship with Scott Coker. So now the cards are on the table, and everybody has to ante up and see who has the highest in the pot at the end.
And it's not like Mousasi wants to fight Bisping.
Well, Bisping is a whole different kettle of fish between him and Yoel Romero and GSP and everything else going on right now. That's do we even want to get into that at this moment?
How much time do we have?
Not enough.
Not enough, yeah. Women's strawweight fight saw Cynthia Calvillo beat Pearl Gonzalez, round 3, 345 with a rear naked choke.
Yeah, so ultimately the whole controversy over breast implants didn't really mean anything and didn't actually change anything because Calvillo was the favorite going in, so she basically did what we all expected.
Absolutely. Now, the next fight saw Thiago Alves fight Patrick Cote, and this one was all Alves, 30-27 across the board.
And unfortunately, this led to the other retirement of the main card.
Yeah, Patrick Predator Cote retired from MMA as well after his fight. And this one, I wasn't sure how many fights he had left. I mean, he was on his second win, so to speak, but, only a fighter really knows when it's time to hang them up.
Yeah, so I respect his judgment, I respect his decision, but I have to say, and I wouldn't have said this before he came back to UFC for his second run, but after the good career that he's had in his second go-around, I'm really going to miss him.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a character, and if this was the good old days of the UFC, I'm sure he would have a job for life.
Yeah, well,
he could probably be part of the UFC Canada. He could probably get an office job there, help with the fights up here. You know what I mean? He could have had an office job with the UFC Canadian department, but they've made some cuts recently. So,
well, I think you can still say that Patrick Cote has a job for life. It may not be in any specific type of UFC Canada or UFC Las Vegas type of job. But with his experience and his record, I would say anybody that ever wants to learn anything about MMA is going to give this guy a call.
I would love to see him in broadcasting as an announcer for the French stations up here.
That could be a possibility as well. I think for Patrick Cote, the options are unlimited, and he's taking this retirement from actively fighting because the options there are much more limited. He's making a calculated decision.
Absolutely. And the last fight on the main card saw Charles Oliveira fight Will Brooks. Stevie, you said it last week, and it really struck me as I'm watching this fight. Brooks doesn't like fighting guys named Oliveira, does he?
No, not at all. And I even made that comment to somebody I interviewed earlier today. You're going to have to wait till MMA Mania next week to see who it was. But I will say it's turning out to be really bad for Brooks to fight anybody named Oliveira. And one thing that struck me from the person I talked to, who he made a very good point, in Bellator, people used to fear Will Brooks because he was the champion, and you always gave the champion a certain amount of respect, like, that's a bad mofo. But in UFC, he's not a champion, and people aren't giving him that respect, and nobody's afraid of him, and he's having to learn the hard way that it's not Bellator, and he's going to have to make some big adjustments.
Well, you better make some adjustments soon.
Yeah, well, first adjustment would be not fight a guy named Oliveira.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be on the main card at his next fight. I think he'll be relegated to the main event of the prelims.
Or in the middle of the prelims, but yeah,
the middle would work too.
He's going to have to earn his way back to pay-per-view, but give the official result for the record.
Rear naked choke, first round, 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Ouch.
Yep, time to readjust.
Miles Fury Jury beat Mike De La Torre TKO elbows and punches in the first round at 3:30.
Well, that's not really a surprise because all along I said that Fury Jury was the real deal, but he'd had some trouble with moving between camps and a couple of fights that didn't go his way. But with De La Torre, who is a mediocre fighter over his last 5 or 6, Jury was somebody who was ripe to pick him, and he sure did.
Kamaru Usman beat Sean Strickland unanimous decision. Usman wore a really cool mask at the weigh-ins, kind of really scary, and I think when it comes to this fight, it was really one-sided as 30-26 on 2 of the 3 judges' scorecards here, and Usman wants to fight Neil Magny next.
No surprise on either count, because
that's a good fight, though.
Because Usman was a bad mofo when he was on the Ultimate Fighter Top Team versus Blackzilian season. He won the damn show, and he's on an upward trajectory right now in UFC.
Well, we move on to... Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I didn't say anything.
Shane Burgos beat Charles Rosa TKO punches late in the 3rd round at 1:59, and the last fight on the Fox Sports 1 prelims saw Patrick Cummins beat Jan Blachowicz 29-28 across the board. 29-28 on 2 of the 3 judges, and 1 judge scored it 28-28.
Yeah, it was a majority decision.
Mm-hmm. Now, as far as the Fight Pass prelims are concerned, there were a few. 3 went to decision. The only one that did not was Gregory Gillespie beating Andrew Holbrook. Knocked him out. Gillespie. 21 seconds.
Right.
First round.
And as expected, Magomed Bibliatov was basically a one-sided wipeout of his opponent, although that didn't stop people from talking about the controversy of his Chechnyan friends.
Yeah, that I would just stop talking about that if I were it's just no. No.
I wasn't even the one who brought it up on the Sherdog Roundtable, but once it's out there, it's out there.
Yeah, but it's...
He's sponsored by a warlord. You have to acknowledge that.
What good is it, though, to bring it up? It's just going to bring negativity into it.
Well, he should probably disassociate from some of the disreputable people that sponsor him, and then it won't come up.
True. No, you're right. It's just, I saw that and I cringed. I was like, you're kidding, right? And then I did my research and no, he's not kidding. This is not good. This is not good at all.
That's the problem, is it's all true. Bibliatov is a great fighter. This should be acknowledged. And so should his disreputable friends. That should also be acknowledged. You can't have one without the other. He needs to do away with the other, and then we won't ever have to talk about it again.
Wrapping up the Fight Pass prelims, we saw Desmond Green beat Josh Emmett, split decision, 29-28, 30-27, and 28-29, so all over the place here. And in a women's bantamweight fight, we saw Kaylin Chikugan beat Irene Adana,
Aldana.
29-28 on 2 of the 3 judges, and the other judge scored at 28-29.
Now, before we go on to Bellator, are you
Oh,
going to need some
Jesus.
help with pronouncing the names here?
No, yes.
Let me get you started with one. Anastasia Yankova versus Alina Kalyaneru.
That was the co-main event, a catch weight at 132. Stevie, why was this a catch weight fight?
Because she agreed to fight at 130 and Yankova could not make that weight. And this is the second time in a row that she has failed to meet a contracted weight.
So, good thing she won here.
Yeah, I mean, she's winning. That's one thing, and she's popular. That's another thing, but it's pretty clear to me from her last 2 fights that if she wants to eventually fight for a title, it's not going to be at flyweight. She's going to either have to move up to 145 or they're going to have to create a bantamweight division for her because she ain't getting anywhere close to 125 unless she gets some help.
Why would she go to 145?
Well, because she doesn't have a 135 division to go to. So that's what I'm saying is either she needs a nutritionist, which somebody I interviewed today suggested, or she needs to bulk up and go to 145, because right now, Bellator doesn't have a 135 division. They would have to create one for her.
When it comes to the women's weight classes, this is a fighter that, as you said, is tailor-made for a 135 weight class. It's a shame Bellator doesn't have one, but if she made the jump to UFC, there's some damn good fights there for her waiting for her there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as the main event for Bellator 179 is Rafael Carvalho.
Melvin Manouf. Just thought I'd get that one out of the way for you right there. No mercy, just call him No Mercy.
Defended the title against Melvin, and it went to the championship rounds, which is good. Except if you're Melvin, because he got his head kicked off.
Well, that's sort of what was eventually going to happen once he finally decided to engage, because the first 3 rounds, Cavallo was just picking him apart on the feet and then sealing the deal with takedowns when he needed to. And finally, Melvin had had enough of it in the 4th round and started pressuring forward and trying to throw some haymakers. And the problem was, even though he managed to tag his opponent once or twice with a good left overhand, that was not nearly as good as the left head kick he received in return. So it was lights out.
Yeah, there was no quick stoppage in this one. It was like, what do you want me to do? Like, do you want me to not jump in here? I mean...
Yeah, this was a walk-away head kick. It was over, done, finito.
3:15 of the 4th round.
And Cavallo issued a proclamation after the fight saying, I'm the champion, I'm here to stay. If you want this belt, you better call me out or take a shot at me, because I ain't going anywhere.
Valeru Murkia beat Tajami Chan. Majority decision here, 29-28, 29-28, and 28-28.
Yeah, that's because the 3rd round, Chan got one takedown after another, and one judge decided, well, that was dominant enough to give it a 10-8 because his opponent did basically nothing. But the other 2 judges disagreed and only gave it a 10-9, which meant we had a majority decision, which favored Murcia.
And Mihail Nika beat Samba Coulibaly with an anaconda choke 36 seconds in, Stevie.
Yeah, this is one of those cases where announcers and analysts always talk about the fact that very early in a fight, nobody's worked up a sweat, nobody is slippery, nobody can easily slide out of a choke, and it's actually Coulibaly's own fault because he was the one who tried to take this to the ground and instead got put in the choke and reversed and could not get out of it once it went to the ground.
The feeling that I had when it comes to this fight is, yeah, you're right. You're not slippy. You can get a better grip. And an anaconda choke, the more you struggle, the deeper it is.
That is basically what happened here. And Coulibaly had one chance to get out of it if he could have gotten to the fence and pushed off of it, and he could not.
No. And you could almost see him get frustrated, and it's like, well, crap. Like, what am I gonna do? It's like I just started this fight, and you got that adrenaline rush kicking in, and it's like I gotta get out. I can't.
Yep. So basically, the story of Bellator 176 was the first 30 seconds were really exciting, and the last 30 seconds were really exciting. And there's a lot of other stuff in between that you could skip.
Absolutely. As far as upcoming fights that have been announced this past week, we have 2 for UFC Fight Night 109, May 28th in Stockholm, Sweden. They are official now. Ben Saunders fights Peter Sabata, and Emil Meek fights Nordin Talib.
All right, well, that's 2 good fights, and I know you're looking forward to Talib because he's a long-time star of Canadian MMA.
Mm-hmm. And to the surprise of no one, it's actually officially been announced. Cody Garbrandt, TJ Dillashaw, UFC 213 on July 8th in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Well, they needed a fight for International Fight Week, and that's a pretty big one because Dillashaw is the former champ and wants that belt back, and Garbrandt looked pretty damn good in his fight with Dominic Cruz, so I don't think he's going anywhere, but Dillashaw may have a different thing to say about it, so we'll let the 2 of them sort it out.
Well, if the 2 coaches sort it out, as it is the coaches' fight for the Ultimate Fighter season.
That's right.
Now, as far as the notes are concerned, before we talk about this week's shows, we talked about Chris Weidman's appeal. There is a side note here, and it looks like New Jersey is another state that's actually looking into this. I don't know if they've adopted the new rule or not, but they are looking into the reversal of the downed opponent rule, from what I saw.
Reversal of their current rule or reversal
yes,
of the new rule?
Of the current rule.
So they
of their current rule.
So then they would adopt the palms down rule.
That's what they're looking at right now, but it's funny how New Jersey immediately is starting the review. It's like, oh crap, we better get on top of this.
Yeah, everybody better get on top of this after UFC 210.
Luke Rockhold wants to fight Anderson Silva at UFC 212. Stevie, why is Anderson Silva in need of an opponent?
Well, I think I'll defer to you for that answer.
Kelvin, I think, has a new motto. I believe it's allegedly puff, puff, pass.
I thought you were going to go with a smoke weed every day.
Someone made the joke it might be edibles.
You know what? It very well could be, but either way, it was high enough to pop a flag, even with the relaxed rules for how many metabolites you can have in your system. He still somehow managed to exceed the limit. So
we are going to find out what happens with him in the future as an official thing. But he's been notified of the failure, so now we know the process. We wait to see what happens.
And he was removed from the rankings last week. I didn't have a chance to put him in any weight class when I updated after UFC 210.
That was quick.
They were not waiting.
Speaking of marijuana, allegedly, Nate Diaz.
Allegedly. You say the words allegedly, marijuana, and Diaz in the same sentence, and the word that doesn't belong is allegedly.
Well, he's due to... We taped this show on Tuesday this week. He is scheduled to be in front of the Nevada State Athletic Commission on Wednesday.
Vaping up every day.
Let's see. That featherweight contender, Daniel...
Featherweight contender Daniel Cormier.
No, I was gonna say.
Now who's smoking?
I tripped over my word. I was gonna say Weichel or Weichel. I was trying to remember which one it was.
Daniel Weichel, the Weasel. He's fighting this weekend.
He considers himself the number 1 featherweight contender for a long time now.
Yeah, actually, he told me that in his interview, and that went up on MMA Mania this week. So, by all means, go check it out or listen to it on youtube.com/AngryMarks.com. But he said that basically, when you look at the records of all the different people who are in contention, the only person close is Emmanuel Sanchez, and he beat Sanchez, so he's number 1. And if he beats Teixeira, that cements it. It really proves he's number 1.
Yeah, hell of a fight, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but there are 2 more things here. We talked about Cody Garbrandt fighting TJ Dillashaw. Well, someone who's fighting this week, Demetrius Johnson, also wants to fight Cody, but he wants to fight him at flyweight.
Yeah, well, good luck with that campaign, but right now just worry about what you got ahead for you at UFC on Fox.
Well, I mean that's he's got to win his fight, and I don't know if Cody would fight at flyweight. I don't know if he would or not, depending. He's the champ right now.
That's why I'm saying good luck with that. But again, worry about what you got in front of you.
Now, the last news item here is a very proud thing to say. They have announced the first inductee to the UFC Hall of Fame this year, and it's a very well-deserved inductee as Uriah Faber.
California Kid, Uriah Faber.
They gotta play his entrance music when he goes to get his plaque.
California knows how to party.
Oh man, I mean, I'm happy for him. That's a guy when you think someone who's deserving, and he'll be in the modern wing, obviously. WEC, UFC. I mean, legendary fighter.
Of course, long-time veteran of the sport, former WEC champion, been all the way to the mountaintop many times without winning the title in UFC. So his record speaks for itself. His popularity speaks for itself. And I would definitely put his series of fights with Dominic Cruz as must-watch for any fight fan.
Now, can we have Dominic induct him?
That would be fun. I think Dominic would actually do a nice job and put him over. I think it would be like Jim Cornette inducting the Rock and Roll Express. He would put aside his own feelings and praise his opponents.
All right, so let's talk about UFC. Actually, you know what? Let's talk Bellator. We'll wrap up with UFC because we do want to mention the big main event here with Eduardo Dantas defending his title against Leonardo Higo.
Yes, Leandro Higo.
And Stevie, does Higo have a chance here?
Yeah, actually, he really does. He is a Pitbull Brothers team fighter, which is why he also carries the Pitbull nickname. He is a former competitor on the Ultimate Fighter Brazil, and he's the former Legacy Fighting champion. So he's got all the credentials that you would need. He's 17-2, and the majority of his wins come by submission. So the one thing Eduardo does not want to do is let this guy take him to the ground and give up his back, because he'd be in big trouble if that happened.
But Dantas is the champ for a reason.
No, that's absolutely true. Dantas is the champ because he is faster and more accurate and more devastating than almost anybody in the bantamweight division in Bellator. So Higo is the real deal, but he's going to have to be better than his best to beat the champ.
I'm surprised for a bantamweight his power.
Yeah, he has got really almost disturbing power, to be perfectly honest with you, because if you look at what he did to his friend, Marcos Calvo, just imagine what he'd do to an enemy. He did that to his friend over 5 rounds.
Hey, buddy, don't hit me. I'm good. Don't hit me.
Yeah, Calvo was like, "Can I get the name of that Mack truck, please?"
Vaishal.
And Teixeira. And Vaishal's on a 3-fight win streak, but Teixeira hasn't lost a fight in over 5 years.
5 years?
Yeah. He's had like 8 wins and a draw, or maybe it's 9 and a draw, but he's undefeated for quite a long time.
So would you pop if they ended the fight with the announcement, the streak is over?
Well, I don't think they need to do that, but I do think this one really does prove Vaishal's point if he wins. And hey, if Teixeira does, then he's gone from a guy that nobody considered for contention to suddenly being in the catbird seat. It's actually a much bigger winning proposition for Teixeira. He's got more to gain, and Vaishal has more to lose.
So it's a dangerous fight for both fighters.
Absolutely, but I still like Vaishal because of his overall experience, and I just think that some of Teixeira's wins, even though he's on an undefeated streak, there's a bunch of split decisions in there. So some of those wins, not calling them tainted, that's not the word for it, but questionable. They could have gone the other way. So He's riding a good streak, but it's also a little bit of a lucky streak.
Adam Borks fights Anthony Taylor.
Yes, and absolutely 100% going with Borks in this because Anthony Taylor is all talk and no go.
If
his fights were as good as his mouth, he could cash more checks.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to write him off.
But he's 1-2.
But this is not the fight for, this is not an easy fight for him. This is an uphill fight. Yeah, uphill struggle, if you will.
This is a 1-2 fighter going against the hometown favorite. I mean, literally, it is his home. He's going to have an uproarious reaction when he comes out for this fight in Budapest.
And Stevie, you're going to have to say this next one for me. I'm going to tap on that one.
You're not even going to try.
No.
All right. Well, I will do the honors then. We have Lena Ovichnikova versus Helen Harper.
Coin flip fight for this one, or?
I don't think so, because Helen Harper is really, really small for flyweight. She was on The Ultimate Fighter, as you'll recall. So she was not fighting in this weight class at that time. And Lena is not only going to be the bigger woman here, but Lena is a very experienced kickboxer besides being an MMA fighter. So this does not bode well for the Hellraiser. I like her. I just don't like her in this fight.
When it comes to kickboxers in MMA, it's either hit or miss.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about between the experience and the size disparity. I don't picture her hits missing here.
Okay. And there is one prelim on Spike.com. Brian Moore fights Ludovic Klein.
Yes, and I will not tell you anything about it because I do not know anything about it, so that's that.
All right. UFC on Fox 24 is also this weekend. And the aforementioned Demetrius Johnson is defending his title in a very intriguing fight, because if he wins this fight, he is all-time, most title defenses, I believe.
Yes, most successful ever. This is his 10th title defense.
That's craziness, because it just shows that he has found his niche here, and, I mean, you've said it before, champions will lose one day. But to have 10 straight title defenses is amazing.
Yes, he is historic. There is a reason that he is right at near the top of the pound-for-pound rankings, because even though he's not the most popular champion they have, and even though the flyweight division is not the most popular division, and even though there's been a lot of people suggesting that he's just too good for this weight class because he's already beaten everybody else, you just have to look at it on paper and say he's that damn good.
Mm-hmm. And his opponent is Wilson Reese.
Hayes. It's the silent R. You got to know that by now.
It's just, I don't like his chances. I think DJ's too much for him here.
I look at the fact that he's already lost fights to Husier Formiga and Yuri Alcantara, and his wins recently, the only really impressive one was beating Hector Sandoval with a rear naked choke. But other than that, going to decision with Dustin Ortiz and Lucas Sasaki doesn't say to me number one contender.
No, it does not. DJ wins this fight, in my opinion. I'm assuming it's the same for you.
Absolutely.
Rose Namajunas.
Thug Rose. Just call her Thug Rose.
Against Michelle Watterson. This one is going to be a war at strawweight.
Karate hottie.
Yep. We saw her beat Paige Van Zandt last.
That is absolutely right. Although, since that time, as I just learned from John Pollock, Paige Van Zandt one-chopped and was impressive in doing so. Was told by the judges that she should be a professional chef.
And she advances to the finals of their star competition.
Yes, it's their all-star battle, so she's playing for charity and doing quite well in the process.
And she beat someone named Dorothy Hamill, Stevie. I think that name rings a bell.
Yes, indeed. A famous figure skater. So, again, all props to her. Oh, and speaking of props, if you're placing a prop bet on the fights, it's minus 850 for DJ over Hayes.
Good Lord.
Plus 575. So, yeah, you want to bet on the dog. You could make a lot of money, but you're not likely to. And for this other fight we've talked about so far, minus 135 to Thug Rose, plus 115 to Karate Hottie. So, there's some evidence here it could go either way.
Ronaldo Souza fights Robert Whittaker.
See, the odds makers actually give Whittaker a better chance than I do, because it's minus 230 to Jacare, plus 190 to Whittaker. In my own mind, it's not that close. I think Jacare takes his head off.
I'm actually picking Whittaker in this one.
Really?
Yeah, I think Jacare is due for a loss here.
Well, let me look at Whittaker a little closer. Let's see. He beat Biggie Rhodes. He beat Clint Hester. He beat Tavares. He beat Uriah Hall. He beat Derek Brunson. Yeah, you know what? I'm not going to change my pick, but I don't think you're up a creek without a paddle here. I think you've got a good case.
And Jeremy Heathen Stevens against Renato Moicano.
Renato. One of these days, you're going to remember.
I know.
And
that's not today, though.
Yeah, today's not that day. And it's also not his day in the odds, because it's plus 155 to Moicano, minus 195 to the Little Heathen.
No, I definitely have Heathen win this fight for sure.
Probably by a knockout.
Now, as far as the prelims that are also on this show, we've got quite a few on both Fight Pass and Fox. Some guy named Roy Nelson, Stevie?
Yep, big country.
I guess Alexander Volkov. This is the big boys play.
Yeah, and the big boy who gets favored here is the taller Volkov at minus 145, plus 105 to big country.
Not a bad thing to put some money on big country here.
You're not going to win that much if you do at plus 105. That's not really gaining you a lot. No,
but this line will definitely change at the weigh-ins.
I can think of one other line that'll change.
Yeah, I know. I know what you're going to say.
Waistline.
Patrick Williams fights
Tom DeKesney. Yes, Peter, it was good. I got you with that one. But anyway, DeKesney is the minus 420 favorite over Patrick Williams. Plus 300.
I guess. I mean, I don't think it should be that high, but I can see why.
Mm-hmm. And next up on the list, we have Bobby Green and Rashid. This time you can say the R, Peter. Magomedov. And Magomedov is minus 335. Bobby Green is plus 245.
Plus 245?
That's one where I'd be tempted to pick the dog.
Mm-hmm. I could see it.
I mean, you can't take anything away from losing to Dustin Poirier and Edson Barboza.
No.
Before that, he had beaten a who's who of people, like the punk Josh Thompson and Pat Healy and James Krause and Jacob Volkman. He was beating solid, tough dudes all up and down until he ran into a buzzsaw in Barboza and a knockout in Poirier. So he could be due for a big comeback on this one. All
right, so Tim Elliott fights Louis Smolka in the last fight on the prelim Fox card.
Yes, minus 310 to Tim Elliott and plus 230 to Smolka, and I agree with that line.
And as far as the Fight Pass prelims, Aljamain Sterling fights Augusto Mendez, and for those who haven't seen it, Sterling poked fun at Cormier's weigh-in difficulties. Yeah, it's pretty good, actually.
Well, what's not good for him is that the Funk Master has slid all the way down to Fight Pass.
That is true. That is something that, a win here will definitely boost him back up.
Yes, minus 215 says that he's likely to get there. Plus 165 to Mendez. And you know what, Peter? I'm just going to preempt you here, and I'm going to run down the rest of these lines, and then you can add your thoughts. So, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Zach Cummings is minus 410. Nathan Coy is plus 290. Ashley Evans Smith is minus 165. Ketlin Vieira is plus 125. Cub Swanson. Oh, wait, that's a different card, so I'll stop there.
Oh, boy. I like Evan Smith in that fight. Zach Cummings, Nathan Coy. I would probably go for Cummings in this one as opposed to Coy. Clark Collier. I'm leaning towards Collier. I don't know why. It's a feeling that I have.
Oh, yeah. Plus 105, minus 145, Collier to Clark. And Smith and Sanchez, plus 220 to minus 300.
See, that one's off for me.
Okay,
that should be closer.
You don't like Sanchez being that heavy of a favorite?
No, I think that's going to be closer.
I would look at his record over his last 4 fights and think that Sanchez is the right pick for this.
Well, I mean, this is why we fight the fights, right?
Yeah, that is why we fight the fights.
All right. Well, Stevie, what's on tap for Thursday night AMP talking about fights?
Well, we might talk about a fight between Shibata and his opponent that left a sizable contusion on his brain.
Yeah, that wasn't pretty. That was, oof. I mean...
He's being medically advised not to wrestle again.
Ever?
The doctor said there's a high chance of it reoccurring.